We discover commonalities. We accept that life is a glorious, heartbreaking thing, and we embrace and celebrate all of it. Take the ride with us. We're glad you're here. Now, here's your host, Mark O'Brien.
Hello from wherever you are. We are, as always, coming from world headquarters in Middletown, Connecticut, home of the world-famous annual Gluten Festival. Hope you can get there sometime. This is going to be a remarkable show, I believe, because my friend Diane Wyzga is here, and I love the fact that Diane is my friend, and we have never been in each other's company. I'm on the East Coast, and Diane is on Whidbey Island, Washington, wherever that might be. And so we've just never been able to have a hug or anything like that. But Diane is just so dear to me, and she has a story you won't believe. So, Diane, thank you for being here and welcome.
I'm delighted, Mark. Thank you for the invitation. And the door is always open out here on the left coast for story and pie. I'll leave a podcast burning in the window for you.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, we agreed that we weren't going to attempt to structure this conversation in any way, that just delights me. And I know that you have a history that's just so incredibly rich, and I don't want to compel you in any way to share anything that you don't want to share. But at the very least, on your LinkedIn profile, you say that you are a survivor. Could we start there?
Sure. Thank you. So yes, I am an incest survivor. And so that's enough to be said. That was something that I uncovered probably in my late 20s, early 30s. There were things that I knew, but like everything else, you don't want to know what you know. And it happened to come up in the course of a premarital conversation. The counselor said, I get the feeling that there's something going on in your background. I don't want to tell you what it is, but I think you really need to go and check it out. And I did. And sure enough, what she had intuited, what I had intuited, ended up being true. So for the longest, I did what any self-respecting person would do. I just dove head first into all forms of therapy, the traditional therapy, art therapy, acting therapy, to get clear on what happened, how was it allowed to happen, and how do I use my experience to help others. And so oftentimes you will hear me say that the purpose of my work is so that you are seen, heard, understood, and listened to. And yes, that is important, but where does it come from? And it comes from that very deep experience of something's going on. No one's listening to me. Is it possible that I'm lying? Is it possible that I'm making this up? And then once you do get to the root of what was going on, then how do you relate to perpetrators? How do you relate to the church? How do you relate to authority that was supposed to protect you, pay attention to you, listen to you, understand you? So I've told a story from the platform for the longest time to women survivors, to say, hey, it's not your fault. This is what we know. This is how we know it. And the best thing that you can ever do for yourself is take yourself seriously and get the help that you need. So I have moved away from, it's an interesting question too, because there was a point in time where I identified myself as a survivor. The story we tell, the narrative we tell about ourselves, that was part of it. And there came a point in time where I made a deliberate decision to let that go. Wasn't doing me any good anymore to identify with that. I had done all the work that I needed to do. And it's sort of like having something on your resume in a way. There's something there. I mean, it took place at some point in time. You took from it what you could learn, but it doesn't define you anymore. Yeah. How's that?
I thank you. I would suggest humbly, it doesn't define you at all. You said two things that jumped out at me. One was you made me curious if what you had experienced is what I hear described sometimes as repressed memories. And the other thing that really got me was you said it was allowed to happen. Does that mean others knew of it?
Yes. So as to the repressed memories, the way I would describe it without being a therapist myself is to say, so there are things that we know, all of us have things that we know, but for whatever reason, we can't allow them to come to the surface. And in this particular case, the reason I couldn't allow it to come to the surface, because then what if I said something? What if somebody got in trouble? What if I really was a liar? What if I was shunned? What if? Because one of the perpetrators was a priest in the Roman Catholic Church. And so what's a little kid doing going up against that kind of authority? What's a kid doing going up against a relative? And so to push this down is a way of staying safe. It's a way of saying, I don't know enough about the world, so maybe I'm wrong. But whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to get it out of the surface. I'm going to push it down as far as it can go. I know how it showed up in my life going forward. So this happened when I was a child. And only looking back, can I understand the ways in which I behaved in response to that. So that was question number one. And then question number two, repressed memories, and then refresh my recollection on the second part.
Allowed.
Yes. So a lot in my experience in therapy groups, in my experience talking with other survivors, and it'll be mostly women, 4, 5, 6 out of 10. And then, of course, boys, but not to the same number. The experience is that people knew. People always know. It's not a secret. But the mother might not want to do anything about it because she's afraid. Somebody else might not want to do anything to do about it because they're fearful. And what are you going to do? And how will you confront? So in my experience, which is all I'm talking from, there is knowledge about what's going on. But as with so many things we don't want to look at, we turn our eyes away. And it's easy to say the child is lying. It's easy to say the child doesn't know what the child knows. And it's at that level we really have to pay attention, because children know. Children know what's not right. Children know what's wrong. Children know. And so to not see them, hear them, listen to them, shame on us.
I always say that children have infallible BS meters.
Yeah.
you got to get up pretty early to put something over on a kid.
True.
True. This makes me wonder. I'm assuming we both know people, I certainly do, who are involved in domestic violence communities, in survivorship, in advocacy, et cetera, et cetera. And it seems to me, no, I'm going to put it as a question. Should what you suffered be considered domestic violence?
Domestic violence is a funny term, isn't
Mm,
it? As if the
yeah.
violence itself is domesticated. I understand what they're trying to say, violence that takes place in the home. And so my sense of things is any time a human being is violated, harassed, mistreated, their dignity is taken away, they are not respected, they
Mm,
are oppressed. Anytime we look at how someone in power or control can belittle another child, an adult, I would say that that is a violence against the human spirit. And so we have a label, domestic violence, and people generally know what that means. But I would like to see it expanded to any time someone takes advantage of another in a mean-spirited, hurtful, harmful way.
Amen to that. And I'm sorry if I appeared to be distracted. I was trying to find an email, and I can't, of course, because I want to. But our mutual friend Craig James is
Mhm.
doing a session this coming Wednesday, and it's something like closeness versus intimacy, or something like that. But domestic violence, and I'm sure there are specialists who would argue these things aren't the same, but sometimes you hear domestic violence characterized as intimate partner violence. And I think there are so many layers to the terms intimate and partner. And it seems to me, if we don't want to, if we can't, in some strict or technical terms, characterize what you experienced as domestic violence, it seems to me that it could be considered intimate partner violence, because family members, even close associations of the family, could certainly be considered intimate connections, in that they know you intimately well. And then the whole thing about partner, you said something about a priest. Don't we think that most priests would say, well, yeah, I mean, I'm your spiritual partner. And then what?
Mm.
Is
Um,
that fair?
in my experience, I would feel it more expansive
Okay.
to say that it is abuse.
Oh, absolutely.
It's abuse. And whether we call it child abuse, spousal abuse, partner abuse, because the abuse comes from any time there is a connection. You've got teachers and coaches and clerics and religious people and relatives and babysitters, and the list goes on and on and on. So to bring it down to its most common denominator, it's abuse. And it's abuse of fill in the blank. And oftentimes the abuser themselves has been abused. And I knew this to be true in one of the cases. The person himself was abused by someone. And so part of the work that we do is to say the chain of abuse stops with me. The
Mm.
chain of abuse stops here. And if you can come out from underneath the self-loathing, the self-doubt, and find a space of empathy first for yourself, so that you can begin to have a measure of forgiveness for yourself. And then to find a way to extend that empathy and forgiveness to others. It takes a hell of a lot of work, and not everyone will do it. And it might take years just to get to the point of self-forgiveness. And that right there, I think if there is a shining future, I would say that's it. That we find a kind, gentle, respectful self-forgiveness. And once you get to that, it's like dropping 50 pounds overnight. Which bang, it's gone. It can happen that dramatically. You can see clear to yourself. And that's what I would encourage.
And I love your characterization of it as spiritual abuse, because it seems to me that is the heaviest, most profound part of it. And I can't separate it. And maybe this has to do with my own experience, I don't know, but I can't separate it from a really pernicious kind of disrespect. It's just so utterly disrespectful to take advantage of someone in that way.
It speaks, I think, to a measure of self-loathing, self-doubt, self-rage, self-whatever, that this is the way to act out. And we can get into, people can talk about, power and this and that. Okay, fine. For every person, there will be a different explanation, a different way of stating it. But to say that something like this goes to the soul of a human being, I think is accurate and probably pretty universal in understanding. And so when you say that the chain of abuse stops here, it has to, because otherwise you yourself, out of your own pain, become the next abuser.
Wow. I don't believe I've ever connected dots this way before. But I understand, thanks to you, that if you can't forgive yourself for having been abused, then the likelihood of your abusing is probably very much greater. I've never, most particularly, I never thought about forgiveness in that way and the importance of forgiveness in that way.
When you're young, when you're little and you don't understand stuff, and you're reliant on the big humans to take care of you as a little human, there are things that you intuit, that as you said, the BS detector. But what are you going to do about them? And so in some cases, it can get warped and morphed. And the only way that you can get back at those who have hurt you is to hurt someone else. Whether it's pulling the legs off a spider or kicking puppies or something else. It's the expression of that sense of harm, that soul fracturing that goes on. And so to be able to do the hard work, and I talk a lot, you've heard it, about doing the archaeological dig on yourself to get to your own narrative. Because once you clearly understand what your own narrative is, the story that you've been telling yourself, the story that you could be telling instead, that's where that comes from. That sense of how come I'm like this? How come one of my storytelling mentors used to say, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that anger come from? Where is that? So the hard work of your own story sets you free. And then you lose 50 pounds and then there you go.
Okay. So, well, I know you're on the West Coast, but right here, it's about 1:20 and we're going to break in just a minute, but it's about 1:20. So if I spend the rest of the day today working on my own narrative, when I wake up tomorrow morning, will I be 50 pounds lighter?
No.
Dang it.
And that beach diet doesn't work the same way either.
So
But it's
are you trying to tell me that that's going to take hard work too?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sitting on it.
Hey, you know what? Sorry, this is a complete tangent, but if I knew then what I know now about weight training, I never would have done it, because I was 170 pounds and a rack 40 long men's suit forever. And then at 29, when I was at Trinity College, I'm not going to blame it on some other guys. I met some other guys who would go to the athletic center at Trinity and lift weights every day, and I started going with them. And the next thing I knew, I was like 190, and then I was 200, and I wouldn't have done that.
Ooh, like Arnold. Starting to look like Arnold.
Yeah. So now I'm like 230, and I'm thinking, well, what happened to me? Okay, so
carbs.
Well, yeah, that too. We are going to take our first break, and here's what I'd like to do. When we come back, and I'm going to steal one of your terms, story arc. I love the way this thing is starting to arc. I want to talk about what you have accomplished in your professional life. And then I want to tie what we've discussed in those first two segments to what you do with storytelling now and why, because they all seem of a piece to me.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you all for being here. We're going to take our first break. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
Woohoo.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. Have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dreamvisions 7 radio network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands, distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
This is Dreamvision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind. with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back, everyone. In case you missed the first segment, I'm here with my wonderful friend Diane Wyzga, who is no surprise to me, sharing just amazing stuff. Diane, in your professional life, among other things, you have been a Navy nurse, as I understand it, and formerly a practicing attorney, as I understand it. Which came first?
A Navy nurse. So when I graduated from college with a BS in nursing, most of my colleagues were headed off to hospitals in Boston, New York, Connecticut. So I graduated in New Hampshire, and I wanted to do something different. That's probably a coda in my life. I want to do something different. My dad was a radioman in the Navy in World War II, and his brothers, so I think there were 5 or 6, all went, served, all came home. And so I thought that's what I wanted to do. So I applied and was accepted as a naval officer, went to Newport, Rhode Island in one of the coldest winters ever in January off of Narragansett Bay.
Oh.
Here we are, marching in high heels and stockings to stay in formation. So that came first. That was a very keen desire of mine. And it remains one of the very best decisions I've ever made. I was, for 3 years, served as a Navy nurse, and all pediatrics. So started off in surgical peds, did that for 2 years, and then a year in medical peds. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful because you're supporting the families, you're supporting when the parents are deployed. You've got a parent at home trying to make pretty big decisions. I really liked it a lot. And at the time, I was working with doctors who chose to serve also, and pediatricians, high-end pediatricians and surgeons and folks that I would never have had the opportunity to work with, but for that choice. And today, I still happen to be in touch with a corpsman I served with. And it's nice. It's nice to have someone who remembers you from then and to remember someone from then.
Where, as a nurse, where were you stationed?
Portsmouth Naval Hospital in Virginia.
Okay. I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but my older sister is a Navy wife. My brother-in-law graduated from the academy in 1970 and did 35 years of active duty. Retired and almost immediately got a job with Booz Allen doing military contracting.
God bless them both. I think it was just great. I mean, all the services are wonderful. All the branches of service are wonderful. However, the Navy has the best uniforms.
Love that. I don't know if my brother-in-law will see this show, but he will agree with you if he does. I may make it a point to make sure he sees it. So how does one go from being a Navy nurse to being an attorney, and not just how, but why? What was your motivation? I think I love that as much as anything.
So once I was done with the Navy, once I was honorably discharged, I went on to graduate school, and I got a graduate degree in nursing with a pediatric nurse practitioner certificate and a minor in hospital administration. So, when in doubt, go to school. And that's what I did. But I was on the East Coast, and a fellow that I knew was on the West Coast, still in the Army. And so, bad decision. Went from the East Coast to the West Coast, and the state of nursing at that time was maybe 10 years behind the East Coast. So I could go into a hospital and do floor nursing, which was okay. But I decided that it probably made a lot more sense to go into business. And so I found myself looking for risk management position with a corporation that owned and managed hospitals. And so that gave me an opportunity to use the nursing background and try to improve medical malpractice incidents in hospitals. And while I was doing that, someone said, folks would pay an awful lot more attention to you if you weren't speaking as a nurse in business, but if you were speaking as an attorney. Okay, more people to listen to me. So of course, I go to law school and graduated in the top 15% of my class. So came out with a cum laude degree and went right into what everybody does. You go into a firm and you're working 80 hours a week, and that's so that you can pay back all your law school loans. But what I encountered there was medical malpractice, the medical malpractice work. And I moved from med mal defense, so defending doctors, nurses, hospitals in whatever had happened to a patient. And I morphed over to the other side, to the plaintiff side. And what had done that for me was I was working as an independent contractor with a firm, and I would review their medical records and I would write briefs and motions for summary judgment. And I came upon a very big case about sill zone heart valves. And we discovered that there was an awful lot of dirty laundry behind the production and sale of the sill zone heart valves. And so that put me in a position of almost being a journalist. I want to find out more about what happened. I want to find out what happened to these people. And then I came face to face with various people who had received a sill zone heart valve that inevitably had failed, and what this meant for their life. So there really is, in my life, there's a theme of injustice that runs through my life. Not injustice to me, although after the conversation we had, some would say definitely there is that, and there is. But there's also that sense of injustice to people at large by folks who should know better, by folks who are in power, by folks who are in charge. And so that really lit a fire for me. And from there, interestingly enough, I morphed from the practice of law to litigation consulting. And the reason I did that is because I had been practicing storytelling. I had become a storyteller. I was teaching story in university. And there were two gentlemen in my class, both of whom were litigators. So plaintiffs, litigators, in the courtroom, didn't know one end of a story from another. And I thought, wow, we can do some seriously good work here. And so as a result, those two people, it just like, it's never what you know, it's always who you know. So they put me, the one attorney said, I've got a group of lawyers that I want you to teach. And so 6 Saturdays, I taught them everything I knew. And in the space of one of those conversations, someone said, have you ever heard about litigation consulting before? Like, nope. Well, that's what you are. And that's what you're going to do. And handed me over to what was then the American Trial Lawyers Association. It has since become the American Association for Justice. And for a dozen years, I had my own practice as Lightning Rod Communications. It was a nationally recognized practice, helping lawyers, plaintiff litigators, understand, listen out the story of what had happened to their client so that they could present that story in a clear, concise, cogent, emotional, but not emotional way to the jury, to judges, to insurance adjusters. And that kind of brings me to the end of the arc, because at the end of that, then I made the move from California I walked the Camino, and then I made the move to Whidbey Island. But the bedrock of the work that I do today, I think, was firmly laid in that dozen years when I was working with the plaintiff's bar. because these men and women learned that they had to start with an archaeological dig, there it is again, on their own story. They had to understand why they were doing what they were doing. They had to understand their who, which precedes their why. They had to understand the who. What are they, how come? What is it about them and their values that brings them to this kind of work? And only when they figured that out, with my help, could they then clearly understand and listen out, like a story doula, the stories of what happened to their clients. And so in the course of that, I met many, many people, got them ready for depositions, ran a bazillion focus groups. If you ever want to know what's going on in the mind of people, ask them, how come you arrived at that position? Yeah, it was good work. It was very, very, very good work. And throughout, there is this thread, not only of overcoming injustice or pushing back on injustice, there is also what I used to call chronic responsibility. How many of these things can we take on out of a sense of duty and responsibility versus, I know what my job is here on earth. I know who I am. I know what I'm supposed to be taking care of.
You've done it again. You've made me think of something else. And I hope I don't sound self-serving if I connect it to the disrespect that I mentioned before. And it seems to me, without necessarily comparing notes on our respective backgrounds, which we don't actually have time for right now, I suspect that people who come from circumstances of profound disrespect, spiritual disrespect, maybe have one of two paths. As you suggested, they can abuse and disrespect. Or if they do the archaeological dig, and if they're lucky enough to have particular temperaments or natures, and if they think of the who and the why, what they want to do is to prevent people from being disrespected in the way they were. And I came to this realization, sorry, here comes another self-serving comment, almost subconsciously.
Oh, look.
Because I wrote as a dedication, this book is dedicated to every child who ever had a doubt. And I figured out well after the fact that what I meant was to this kid who doubted himself and didn't want any other kid to do that. Do you think that makes sense in the context of what you've done?
I couldn't have said it any better. And, they say that therapists go into therapy to understand themselves, writers write to figure out their lives, whatever. I have to believe that there is a self-interest deep in us in whatever, and then it'll show up in a particular way. So I'm charmed. I am charmed that this book came from a place of personal self-doubt. And that's a funny thing to say, isn't it? I'm charmed that it came from your self-doubt.
No,
but
that's not a funny thing to say.
It's that. It's the way you've manifested. It's the way you've manifested that. So that some one child, and hopefully bazillions of children, can say, oh, just like me. This is just like me. I'm not different this way. I can whatever. So once again, you're doing the each one lift one thing.
Yeah.
by taking your experience and putting it into a book that will reach kids.
And I remember as a child, every single adult who treated me with respect. And I'm not presumptuous enough to think I could be that for somebody. But I always tell myself when I'm invited to schools or whatever to share my children's books, when I leave, if one child feels better after I go, that's the win. And I don't think beyond that. But I just try to reach them to let them know, no matter what else they're hearing or experiencing, they're actually okay. They're okay. So
in a story, they would call you the Waymaker.
Okay. I think we're at a perfect segue point. We're going to take our second break right now. And when we come back, I want to hear about your storytelling practice, if I can call it that, how and why you do it, what other people learn from it, and what you learn from it.
Oh, good. Okay.
All right. See you all shortly.
Are you ready for the quantum age?
Humanity's next step in evolution?
Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network invites you to the extraordinary platform of evolutionary voices for the quantum age.
Let's explore. Learn more about this upcoming age where we bridge science with spirituality.
Where potentiality meets reality.
Where we take compassion into action.
Our trailblazers and visionaries will ask the whys, the what ifs, while igniting continuous possibility.
Come along with us into an age beyond what we know today, where we can grow together in unity consciousness.
Experience evolutionary voices for the quantum age, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on Dreamvision7radio.com.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands, distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
This is Dreamvision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back again, everyone, and thank you for staying with us. Diane, I want to talk in this segment about, I'm going to call it your storytelling practice, but please correct me if that needs to be corrected. And one of the things that, given what we've discussed so far, and your remarkable and admirable candor, and thank you very much for that. Your vulnerability is touching. I don't know how else to describe it, but you recognize, and I don't know how many of the folks who have joined us today recognize that storytelling is cathartic. And I'm not sure that I would have, to use this expression, gotten myself back without writing and storytelling. So as you tell us about what you do, could you work catharsis in there if you think it fits?
Well, your tagline says that everyone's got a story and everyone's got a story to be shared. And I think
Yes.
it's precise. It's precise to your who, and it's precise to what it is that you're doing right now. And story is therapeutic. I say I'm not a therapist, but the telling of stories or the listening of stories is therapeutic. It's Zora Neale Hurston, out of her novel Their Eyes Are Watching God, who said, there is no greater burden than carrying an untold story. And there's something about that word, untold. And when we have the opportunity to tell our story, and not just bleh, so that people listening have to hold us. I mean, telling the story that we've worked through, telling the narrative that we've figured out with help, it allows us to heal in some way, because we've been seen, we've been heard, we've been understood and listened to. I will say those 4 words till my dying day, because that's all that anybody wants: to be seen,
Yes.
heard, understood, and listened to. No matter where you go, that's all we want. It's all we want. And so the storytelling work that I did, which started 30 years ago, started more as a way of entertainment. I've been a keynoter, and I did stories in domestic abuse shelters. I've taught story. But it was beginning with the lightning rod days that I really understood the power of a story to reveal not just what you do, but who you are and how you do it. And that showed up a couple of years ago on my podcast. So Stories from Women Who Walk started out interviewing guests who had a story to tell. They were walking their lives, life happened, and then how did they respond to that? And after a year's time, one of my coaches said, you do so well at short little sound bites. Why don't you see if there is a niche that you can create? And that's what I did. So for the past almost 3 years, so it'll be 4 years, April 1st, 1000th episode probably should hit around New Year's Eve. I've been offering 60 seconds. Those stories from women who walk, with 60 seconds for motivation and time out and a story prompt. And I do that because I want to give people listening around the world an opportunity to take something small away in their life, something to think about, something to ponder, something to rejoice about, that they can then use in their world, make their world just a little bit better. And like you, if there is one child who comes away hearing what it is that you said when you read that book, if there is one person who said, why did you tell me that story today? Because it was exactly what I needed to hear. And I think I will fall back on our friend Jonathan Goldman, who would say that when you hear a story, you are to raise your eyes to God and ask God, why did you send me this story at this time? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I'm doing, both with Quarter Moon Story Arts, which is my practice, as well as the 60 Seconds podcast.
I have two stock answers to why do I write, and one of them is to get myself off my chest.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that speaks to the cathartic nature of it. What I wonder is, and I will share something that I've learned from doing this show. Obviously enough, I created it so that people could share their stories and people who heard them could recognize, wow, it's almost like what you were saying before, Diane.
Yeah.
There I am. I find myself in that. But what I'm also learning is that in coming on this show to tell their stories, the people who are telling them can have a better opportunity to understand the power of them. And it's almost as if sometimes people think, I didn't know I had that. I didn't know I had that in me. I didn't know it was so powerful. I didn't know it was so common or universal. And it seems to me it's giving people the opportunity to understand that. Do you find people that you work with in storytelling to have those kinds of revelations?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I tell people, I help my clients find the words they didn't know they had to tell the most consequential story of their life. And that is the story of how they got from there to here. And I word it that way because I was taught 30 years ago that every person knows exactly the story they need to tell, they want to tell, but they have to have it listened out of them. And so you start with the belief that the storyteller is in charge of their own story. And my job, like yours, is to be a doula. We just listen that story out of them. And so, yeah, there is that, wow, I had no idea. I mean, really, I did that? It is one of the most joyful aspects of the work I do because of what you just said. They can't believe they really did it themselves. And all it was a matter of a story waiting to be told. And you paid attention to that. And then you gave it voice. Yep. That's how it works.
So because you made me do it, I just started thinking more about listening. And I know people talk about listening all the time. You know, you and I both know people who have practices that are devoted to listening. But it really is such a remarkably powerful way for people to realize they matter because you've listened, and what they can take from or do with that understanding that they matter is hugely powerful.
I follow in the footsteps of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk. And I learned much about listening from his practices. And one of the things that is core to listening that we don't necessarily pay attention to is listen to what you are learning and not how it makes you feel. Because oftentimes our emotional response, reaction, whoa, wait a minute, we want to push back right away. And if you can learn how to sit on your tongue and ask yourself, why am I talking? So that you can listen to learn. And that's where very early in the broadcast, I said, and my train of thought completely derailed. How did you arrive at that position? Because it's a neutral way of asking someone, what the heck? But you get rid of all of that. So you're right. It is the listening, but it's a manner of listening that says, I have something to learn from this person. And if I can get my emotions over to the side a little while, I might not agree with them.
Yeah, that's not important.
you have to pick and choose. You can't be sitting down and talking to every nasty person in the world. But I think that if we gave each other the opportunity to say, where did you come from? How did you get here? What's important in your life? What are you proud of? Who do you love and how come? We might just make it.
We just might.
Might just make it.
Among other things, on that last note, thank you for yet again restoring my faith and my hope. Please share with anybody who's listening today how they can find you. I know there are a couple of different places, and how they can work with you if they so choose.
I'd love that. Thank you. So my practice is Quarter Moon Story Arts, one word, quartermoonstoryarts.net. There's a wonderful website. You can opt in for a valuable MP3 and a PDF that gives you the framework of working on your own story. All the services are there. And you can also sign up for a free 45-minute story startup session. So you can get started on something. So that's the work that I do. And the podcast, Stories from Women Who Walk, is on every platform going. And it's global, absolutely global. We tipped 157,000 plays just the other day. So somebody somewhere is listening. So I would absolutely love to have the opportunity to talk with, work with, share with, and hear the stories that you want to get out into the world.
And I will add that if folks do track you down, they will also hear beautiful music from your brother-in-law, which I just happen to love. And I firmly believe that everybody who wants to write can write. So I am going to encourage everyone who was with us today to get in touch with Diane and let Diane help you discover your stories. Diane,
I would love that. Thank you.
I thank you for being here. This was a treat. I had never before today imagined an all-day program, but I think we could do one. So if you will promise to come back, I will promise to have you come back.
I will bring pie. I'm just delighted.
Thank you very much. You do that, I'll bring the coffee and we'll be good.
All right, then.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to all of you for being here with us today. I will see you live right here 2 weeks from today. Thank you so much.
Buen Camino.
Thank you for tuning into The Anxious Voyage, the program dedicated to sharing stories, helping people, and celebrating life. You can see and listen to The Anxious Voyage on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have a story to tell, or if you know someone who does, please email the host, Mark O'Brien, at mark@o'briencg.com. In the meantime, please remember, the only bad stories are the ones we don't share.
This is Dreamvision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy.